And then he said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills.
I can't catch a break, guys.
Yeah.
Get them the fuck away from me. I can't be around those guys.
People think, oh, well, cleaning your room, that's just a cliche. It's like, yeah, really, eh? Just go ahead and try it.
If people had any idea how powerful sleep is for healing from anything, and the fact that it's free.
My mind is absolutely bulletproof, solid as a rock.
Podcast. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Fight and Fit Show. Today we are going to be talking about honoring your hunger. We're going to learn how to recognize physical hunger cues, practice mindful eating, and become in tune with your body signals, and to develop strategies for nourishing yourself when you are hungry.
How's everybody? I hope you're all having a wonderful week. I hope that you're enjoying this little podcast series that we've been going on. I've actually had a message from a lady, and she was talking to me about her experience with bulimia, and we were obviously talking about our lack of experience with people who were bulimic or who did any kind of purging or that kind of stuff. And she was kind of talking about it as a form of control. And so, you know, there was other stuff going on in her life, and she kind of felt like, you know, it wasn't even necessarily to be skinny or anything like that. It was just a kind of habit that she fell into. And she described it, you know, very much like an addiction with highs. And so, you know, once you got that release for whatever reason, you know, obviously, I'm sure it makes sense, you know, neurologically, you know, once you kind of purge, I'm sure there's all kind of chemicals that flow through your brain, and human beings can kind of get addicted to all kind of things. But a big part of it in her experience was control. And for whatever reason, she felt like she didn't have control in her life. And that was a way of controlling maybe her calories or her food or her weight or whatever kind of form of control that she was after. And it was just this kind of cycle. And she was really struggling with it. She couldn't really get off the train, much like people, you know, struggle with nicotine or with whatever addiction, sugar, whatever your drug of choice might be, or your addiction of choice might be. She was really struggling to get off the train, and she was kind of going to specialists for help, and she couldn't really get anybody to fix the problem, or, you know, she didn't really feel like she was getting the kind of treatment that she wanted, at least in the short term. It was kind of, you know, this thing that was kind of putting on the long finger, or this thing that was kind of like, oh, look, do this, but nothing was super effective. And then one day, you know, she kind of felt a change in herself, and she decided, you know, that she was going to go to counseling. She, for whatever reason, just described that she gave them the problem. You know, it's like, I'm just going to give you the problem. I'm going to talk about what it is, how it's hurting me. I'm just going to step away, and one and done, just kind of walked away from it for good. She got into a relationship, and I feel like that was maybe coincided with this kind of experience of giving the trauma or the issue to the therapist. Once she gave it to the therapist and she was in a relationship, she was in a good space, no more bulimia, no more purging. She had been in a good spot and everything was going well. The issue then being, when the relationship fell apart, she fell back on this crutch that she had for maybe a dopamine hit, you know, maybe just for that neurochemical pulse, maybe to kind of regain control of her life and feel like she was in control of it, or one thing or another. And then so we kind of started regaining control in other forms of her life, and kind of started to step away from the bulimia. And it's still something that this person would struggle with, you know, on a stress to stress basis. Like, that's always going to be a tool that they have in their arsenal in order to solve the problem. And that's kind of something that we've talked about before in terms of like traumas and addictions and stressors, is that, you know, we often as a society can judge people for reaching towards a certain thing because of the result that it has for them long term. But short term, it's often, you know, a very, very good solution. Well, maybe not a very good solution, but certainly a solution to the strategy. Maybe a short term, very good solution to the strategy, because it takes away from whatever pain is present.
Yeah, well, all I know is that if I feel really, really sick or really nauseous, I get a feeling that I need to be sick. After I get sick, it's just like the most pleasant sort of peace that you get, because the nausea goes away for a while. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever had this experience where you're on your own, you're kneeling down, your head's basically in the toilet, you're only after puking your ring up, and then you just basically lay on the cold floor just for a minute, just enjoying the peace of like not having to feel sick for a while, or not have to feel that nausea anymore.
Well, I know even for myself, like just kind of something similar to that. Like, yeah, for sure, I know what it's like. I'm sure everybody knows the relief of getting sick. But for me, one thing that I do, and it's absolutely dreadful, is that if I feel sick and can't get sick, I will literally I'll 2 fingers down the throat, I'll make myself sick because I know I'll feel better once I get sick. Like, obviously, I wouldn't
Yeah.
do it for any other reason, but I just know I need to get sick here. It's not coming up. My stomach's absolutely in bits. It's making me feel all kinds of sideways. I need to get sick. I'll make myself sick, and I'll feel so much better. So yeah, no, for sure, I understand that there's certainly a relief. You go from, but I don't understand it as it pertains to like just chasing that. But as I said, I'm sure you could, if you get sick and for whatever reason, like I said, in that post vomit state that you're in, you feel euphoric for maybe whatever reason. It's like we get caught onto many other things. Why would that not be one of them? And it is for, I'm sure, thousands of people around the world.
Yeah, I wonder what like how it makes you feel like you're in more control. Maybe it's like
I know, yeah,
like
yeah,
a self-punishment kind of thing or something like that there. If you do something bad, it's a corrective mechanism, something like that if you're stressed, maybe. Well, maybe it's just like symbolic as well. Like if something bad is happening or you're like releasing all of this negativity or something. Honestly, this is like I feel like bulimia is way outside my area of expertise. It's something I'd be very, very careful to recommend solutions to or recommend guidance on. That would
yeah,
be something
same.
I'd try and outsource,
Yeah, to a
or
professional. If you're,
refer
yeah,
out.
yeah, 100%. If you're bulimic and like that's the kind of situation you're in, obviously like bulimia is not great because obviously you're making yourself sick. It's like it can be really really bad for your teeth. So it's like so for your oral hygiene, it's like it's not great to have the acid in your stomach coming up through your mouth. So it's not like it's this like symptom free thing, and then also you're not digesting any of the nutrients of the food that you ate. So it's like there's literally nothing in there. So you're getting into a calorie deficit and a nutrient deficit because you're not allowing your body to digest properly. Now, if that's your coping mechanism and you're in the habit of eating regularly and eating good food and all this kind of stuff, and you're really not getting the chance to digest an awful lot of it because stress levels are chronically high, that's your only way of mitigating the stress. It's like we need a better tool. That's all I would be saying. And what I would recommend is all the other tools that are available for relieving stress and all the other stuff that we talked about in this podcast, but actually coming away from bulimia, I'm sure, is a very, very complicated subject, and it's probably very individual, as most things are. Why are you doing it? You could have 6 people who are bulimic in a room, and everyone's doing it for a different reason. Some people are doing it because they're obsessed with their body image. Some people are doing it to punish themselves. Some people are doing it as a form of control. Some people are doing it because their friends are doing it. It's like you really don't know, and that's where you probably want professional counseling to
Yeah.
get to the bottom of it. And so again, yeah, that's something I really started doing in the last 12 months is referring people on to counseling. It's like you really should go deeper into this, and there's so much benefit to going deeper into this. And it's not a quick fix in a lot of cases. For some people, it is, but for the most part, when somebody is traumatized and is dealing with something serious, it's like you got to seek serious help. You got to do some deep work. You got to get to the bottom of it and figure it out.
And a lot of the time as well, just talking about it, even to close friends or family members, can help a lot. Like just articulating your thoughts, like because when you have a problem like that, you don't know how anyone else feels about it. You don't know how anyone else will perceive it, and that's probably one of the big anxieties you have about not sharing it. And once you share it, yeah, and someone gives you their perspective on it, and they can be honest with you as well, about if you're taking the mick or not, or if you're genuinely struggling, and then you might find like sometimes I've come to you guys with problems, and you say, "Oh yeah, I've had the same problem," and been like up until this point, I would have felt isolated and alone, and then as soon as like I talk to you guys about it, you just like the fact that you guys would have struggled with it too, it would have made me feel a lot better about it. And then all of a sudden, a lot of the guilt and the shame around that thing would disappear. And then I think guilt and shame around different things like this stop people from getting help. And I think once they get the help that they need, they can start living the life that they want. And if you can just talk about it and articulate your thoughts and understand what the perception really is around it rather than just ruminating on it yourself, it can help a lot.
Yeah, something for me like that I always do for my own kind of personal development. And as I said, to kind of avoid guilt and shame cycles, like everything's normal. Like even for the most niche thing that you think that is going wrong, it's like I can guarantee you there's at least 10,000 other people that are doing it now. This doesn't make it healthy, doesn't make it safe, doesn't, but I'm saying it's like, you're not alone. It's like there's so many people that are going through so many different, quote unquote unique. It's like, and then if you're to, broaden out, it's like, right, well, what's the issue here, right? Let's say you're overweight because, that's your trauma management tool. Let's say you're bulimic because that's your trauma management tool. Let's say you're this, you're that, you're the other as your trauma management tool. What's the umbrella? It's like, well, you're trying to deal with, you're emotionally dysregulated. You're trying to figure out and understand, or at least you're just trying to cope and survive and hang on. It's like, and geez, that's something that we can all relate to. It's like, that is like, now we're out of the thousands and we're into the millions, if not billions, of people who are trying to, do the same. Like, are there a billion traumatized people on Earth? Possibly, and so
Definitely.
yeah. Well, there you go. Cool. Exactly. Yeah. So I thought I was kind of overreaching there, but yeah. And so now again, we can
But
meet.
how many
Like,
how many starving kids are there?
yeah. But so the thing about it is, like, so then it's like, right, well, how are you dealing with that? It's like, or like that's a little bit more niche. It's like, and maybe you're a niche within a niche within a niche, but it's like, that's still, probably a very common problem to have. And so you're not alone, and so you're not a freak. You shouldn't feel this like unique sense of shame as I am the worst person. Nobody else is like this. Nobody could possibly understand. It's like, and people really get into those horrible shame cycles. And for me personally, what I was saying is like, if I'm going through something, I just like one of my mental games that I play with myself. Like, if you can think about it, it probably happened. It's like, really, like, think about the worst thing you could possibly think about. Probably happened. Think about the best day you could possibly have. That's probably happened to somebody. It's like, think about the most mediocre, mundane life you can live. That's happened to somebody. Think about the most, a series of unfortunate events. It's like, just by strength of sheer numbers, it's like people are so, there's so much happening out there. It's like, if it's happening to you, it's probably happened to somebody else, and so you're not alone. And so, don't feel like you're just this unique case of helplessness. It's like, and if you can think about it, it probably happened. There's somebody probably in your situation, if not worse, who came out well on top, like absolutely 180, that climbed to the very top and is now smashing it beyond belief. It's like, why not?
Mm-hmm. Not 100%. So will we park that one there and we'll move back into honoring your hunger?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so first point is to learn to recognize physical hunger cues. What do you have to say about that? Any ideas, or do you want me to take it off?
Well, now I'm going to get right back to fasting. So the fasting every week in this podcast, but I feel like that was for me a big part of understanding kind of hunger. And just now, again, that's not necessarily day fast or anything like that. Even just choosing, right, I'm going to do a morning fast, and I'm going to skip breakfast today. And as you said, I'm going to notice and honor my hunger. I'm going to understand what it is. I'm going to appreciate, the food that I want, and I'm not going to just give in out of habit. I'm going to start to experience the hunger for what it is. Start to recognize the cues. Start to listen to my thoughts, maybe even meditate a little bit, try and drink some water, just kind of see how that feels, see if it feels a little bit different. Maybe start planning my meals, start getting a little bit excited and looking forward to them, starting to become a bit proactive then instead of just reactive to hunger. And I feel like fasting by nature is like, listen, what are you like with the absence of food? How do you deal with that? And I know for me, like personally today, like I'm just back from a week off, and generally I don't fast on my holidays, and so I was eating pretty much on demand whenever I really wanted to, wake up in the morning, have breakfast, snacks, lunch, dinner, whatever. And I found that today I'm back on my fast. I'll not eat till about 3 or 4 today, my intermittent fasting. I'm absolutely starving, because my body's used to eating at a certain period of time, so that habitual hunger is kind of coming through. Hey Brando, did you miss something?
Yeah, so I think it's important to mention, like, what causes hunger, how it sort of presents itself, and then how to actually honor it, and what that means to actually honor it. I think honor it is a very I don't know, like a woo-woo sort of way of saying it. It's very like hippy-dippy. But hunger basically happens when this hormone called ghrelin spikes in your body. And ghrelin is basically like a time-based release hormone, and it usually spikes at the same times every day. But it will also spike basically when you are hungry. There's also another few things that you should know as well, that there's a difference between like having a craving for a food and actually being genuinely hungry. Ghrelin, if you have breakfast at 9 o'clock every day, come 8:30, you'll probably feel a little bit hungry. But the cool thing is that as the hormone spikes and hits a peak, you'll feel really, really hungry, and it starts to drop pretty quickly. And if you fast, you can, if let's say tomorrow you want to try this out, skip breakfast. You don't normally skip breakfast. If you don't, skip a meal and just watch yourself and just watch the reaction that takes place when you do start to feel hungry. You'll feel the pangs, you'll feel it rise, and then if you have a glass of water, maybe even a cup of coffee or whatever, you'll just feel it dissipate, and then you can just like ride the wave and you don't get hungry at all. And that's how you basically survive fasting.
People panic. That's what I find. People are like, "Oh no, I'm hungry. Oh, I'm starving." And realistically, and in fairness to these people, it's like it feels severe. Like it can certainly feel severe. Like I just before this podcast, like it was my lunchtime there, but 10:30, and I didn't eat anything, and like I was getting like proper strong signals, like close to cramp, stomach ache like sensations. It's like it's pretty severe when you get really, really hungry, when you get bad hunger pang. And so, it's like, I really need to eat something. It's like, but through experience and through history, it's like, you'll be fine. Go without it, drink some water. This too shall pass.
Hunger is not an emergency.
Yeah, well, unless it's been 15 days.
Yeah, well, then you've got other problems. So, so understanding that ghrelin is basically the main hormone that makes you feel hungry is important, and that it comes up at the same times mostly the same time every day. If you have a regular eating cycle, if you don't and you give it the cravings, like you can be tricked very, very, very easily. When you see tasty food, when you smell tasty food, I'm sure like we all have the experience. You walk by the takeaway, oh my god, that'll be so good right now, and you could have eaten an hour ago. You could have eaten an hour ago, and it still smells so good. And then you can also, like, when you do feel full, so like I think what we should also have here is respect your satiety signals as well. Because if you do eat, like, you can trick your brain into eating more by going from, like, let's say salty to sweet. Like I think if you go from, I think it's salty to sweet. So if you have a load of chips and you're full up on like salt or whatever, there's always room for ice cream. There's always room for ice cream, and you can gorge yourself until you're absolutely bloated and stuffed, and then that will mess with your stretch receptors in your stomach. And then if you eat past the point of where you actually feel full, you disrespect it, and you'll gain weight. You'll get into the habit of overeating. And a lot of people find comfort in that sort of full belly feeling too.
Yeah, like I remember I've talked about this before, but when I was doing OMAD and I was eating like a day's worth of calories in a very short period of time, like it took me a couple of weeks, if not a couple of months, before I kind of got used to eating smaller portions again. Like it could so
big.
Yeah, so it's like I was eating big, so then it's like, right, well now I'm eating, not only am I eating regularly now, but now I'm eating regularly and I'm also trained to eat big. All right, well, what happens when I want to eat 2,000 calories 3 times a day? Well, now you're going to gain some weight, my friend.
Yeah,
and so, but it's like just like everything else, I trained my stomach to be bigger. So it took me a longer time to reach that satisfied point because I literally had a bigger stomach.
Yeah, and I think people who do overeat, they should be aware that they do have a bigger stomach, but it doesn't, like, you don't have to eat until you're full. One of the cues that you give as a coach is to eat until you're 80% full. And there's a cool wee thing in yoga. One of the things in yoga to stay like healthy, what they say is, you fill your stomach 1/3 with food, 1/3 with water, and 1/3 air. And I think that's a very good way of doing it to make sure that you don't overeat. But when you do that as well, there's when you overeat, there's a lethargy that comes after it. You feel all sluggish and tired, and you want to take a nap. And if you don't overeat and you eat till you're 80% full and drink plenty of water, you feel energized after your meal instead of sluggish and lethargic, which is also another good thing to know. But learn to recognize physical hunger cues. They usually come at the same times every day, and they're not an emergency. And you should eat until you are satisfied and not until you're absolutely stuffed.
Reasonable. But also another thing, it's like, just like let's put a phrase on it. It's like, like reasonable? Like what do you feel is reasonable? Like, you know, when you're taking the piss, because let's say let's say you're really overweight, or just, you know, you've got a crazy big appetite and you're looking to lose some weight. It's like you know what's too much just by looking at it. And if you don't, you need to start learning what that is. And here's how you know. It's like, based on your activity levels, however much you're eating. If you're regularly gaining weight, it's like you're in a calorie surplus based on the fact that you're gaining weight. And if you're, you know, maintaining weight, it's like, well, it needs to be, you know, maybe 20-30% less than what you're doing now. And so just try and, or you got to drastically increase your energy output. But we're talking about hunger, so it's like, yeah, just smaller portions. That's generally a very good cue. It's like, but the key is like, are you doing smaller portions? I actually had my second report in the last 3 weeks since I did another round of goal reviews with people, and I bumped another lady's calories up by about 300 calories, and she lost weight. Why did she lose weight? Was she eating more food? No. What was happening was that she was actually able to stick to her calorie target, and therefore she was actually losing weight. It's the same instance as the last time. And so, you know, what happens to an awful lot of people is they try and go too small, too small, too small, and then their body's just like, I'm absolutely starving, and they end up overeating then. And so it's like, yeah, this kind of more is less sometimes. You know, it's like it's good to be honest with yourself and to what is a reasonable portion for you. You know, sometimes too little food is as bad as too much food, because too little is just going to lead to too much.
And that's another thing that I think is a way of honoring your hunger, let's say, because if you don't respect it, well then, if you like, honor in my head means respect, all right? And if you don't respect your hunger, well then you're going to probably dismiss how big of an impact being in a strict or a severe calorie deficit is, and how, you know, like how reactive you'll be when you don't feel the need to binge. It is like 7 o'clock in the evening and you're finally sitting down in front of the couch, when the hunger pangs come, like,
and you're sitting there with 1,200 calories in the tank. You're like, oh please.
Yeah, exactly. And how vulnerable you are to, or susceptible you are to, just binging, or just quitting the diet altogether, or secret eating, or any of those other things. So respect your hunger, and understand that has massive influence over your behavior. Like, way more than you think. Way more than you think. Back to the analogy, Joe. You're not a car. Do you get me? You're basically like a horse, Joe.
You're a horse. You're a horse. Stop it. You're a horse.
You need to guide yourself rather than demand it.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. You got to negotiate.
Yeah. Well, like, most people have to negotiate. Most people do. Some people, again, if you have a really powerful why, you can suffer. Like, but if you don't have a really powerful why, and you're just doing this just to try and eat healthier and all this sort of stuff, there's a full bloody spectrum of this stuff. Like, some people can just restrict. Some people can't. Some people are just built different, but they suffer more, and you don't have to suffer like that. And if you ate like 500 calories here, 500 calories there, 500 calories there, you're 1,500 and you're good, you're starving, well then, like, protein would be the best thing to do if you want to snack and you want to feel full again. Because, Joe, it has the highest thermic effect of food, it has the highest satiating factor out of all foods, and it will just make you fucking feel better.
Yeah, and obviously at a genetic point, you know, it matters. Like, genetics do matter to a point, like, especially ectomorphs, endomorphs, mesomorphs. Is like, you know, ectomorphs are just going to be way more sensitive to their cues. Like, they're going to be full quicker. They're not going to be as hungry. It's just
ectos. Oh yeah.
Ectos. Sorry. You know, endomorphs. You know, so the ecto, narrow shoulder, narrow waist. Endo, broad shoulder, broad waist. It's like they're generally the people who are overweight and obese. You know, and it's because, you know, it's built in your makeup. It's like you're probably going to be a little bit less sensitive to your fullness cues, and you're just going to be like have higher ghrelin spikes. It's in your genetics. Does that mean that you are destined to be overweight? No, but it means that you probably have a tendency to be there. And mesomorphs are somewhere in between. You know, broad shoulders, narrow waist for men, broad waist, narrow shoulders for ladies.
Just real quick, all right. No, I think you're right, but I think here's something I just find. Okay, people who are ectomorphs tend to want to be endomorphs, and people who are endomorphs tend to want to be ectomorphs, or like closer to that side. So if you're an ectomorph, you kind of want to be closer to the endomorph. Yeah. And if you're an endomorph, you kind of want to be a bit smaller.
And if you've curly hair, if you've got curly hair, you want straight hair. If straight hair, you want curly hair.
Yeah, and I think it's that information usually makes you go, oh, for feck's sake. But I think it's important to understand that people do have different body types and people do have different strengths and weaknesses. And I think wishing your situation away is not going to help. I think you should take an accurate inventory of what your strengths and weaknesses are. Endomorphs put on muscle a lot more easily than and gain weight a lot more easily than ectomorphs. So like a strength plan would be really, really good for them. It would really, really help them with it. But for a strength plan will be really good for everyone, to be honest. But like they'd be like higher responders in that regard, and they eating more food wouldn't be a big deal to them. But if you get an ectomorph, and they usually respond really well to weight or that stress on their body, and if you tell them to go run 5K, they'd be like, hey, go fuck yourself. But if you get your ectomorphs will tend to not want to eat that much, and they'll do really, really well in running and other sort of like cardio-based activities. And they'd be more efficient and they'd be better off with body weight exercise as well. But they won't tend to overeat or overindulge as much, and they'll be spending energy way more throughout the day. One of the things I found is that when I'm coaching people who want to build muscle, they automatically do all the right things that they should be doing for fat loss. Like they automatically do it, and it's
Yeah.
easy for them, and they do it without thinking. It's like they're adding all these vegetables to their thing. They're eating loads of high volume foods. That they're trying to gain weight that they shouldn't be eating. And they just like they're doing loads of extra cardio, getting loads and loads of steps out like every day to increase their calorie deficit or reduce their calorie surplus. And then with endomorphs, they basically do the opposite. They overeat and all these different things. That have like they overindulge with their calories and they overindulge with their treats, and they just tend to like eating a lot more, and that correlates better to building muscle.
So there you
So
go. Strengths and weaknesses.
yeah, so take an accurate inventory of your strengths and weaknesses. Don't wish away your situation and just make the most of what you have. It will do you good in the long run.
Right, what's next?
Uh, so after that, we have practicing mindful eating and tune into your body's signals. So
You kind of
uh,
touched on this already a little bit, but yeah, this is the next layer.
yeah, we're gonna go a little bit deeper. So mindful eating, all that means is that like if you're gonna have a meal, have the meal, sit down, put your phone, like set a timer on your phone, maybe 10 minutes, and take 10 minutes to eat the meal without looking on your phone, without listening to a podcast or anything like that there. If you can't do it with someone who's sitting there and you can have a conversation with them while they're eating, and be aware of all the different tastes, all the different textures in your food, and eat slowly. So like a good thing to help with. I Part of me thinks this is a bit ridiculous because I find it hard to eat mindfully as well. And I think if you find it hard to eat mindfully, you might relate to that. But like, if you are to, let's say, eat a steak dinner, you use your knife and fork, cut it up, take a bite, put your fork down, and just chew and enjoy the food rather than just eating and watching something on your phone while you're unaware of how it tastes, the texture of it, the temperature of it, all that different stuff. And then also you're not aware of how, let's say if you have like your percentage meter of how full you are, you're not aware of how full you're getting until you're at 110%. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, or until the plate's clean. That's
Exactly. That's the one that's beaten into us as kids.
yeah. This is it. But again, it's something I like to do. Like I like to finish my plate. It gives me that fullness feeling. I'm into that. Sometimes I like to challenge myself and try and finish food that I know I'm well past the limit for. But again, like that's for me personally, it's like that's something that I've had to work on for trying to bulk up. Somebody who's always kind of skinny, never really much of an appetite, a big snacker, but not big meals. Something that I've really kind of got into is trying to, force feed myself a little bit to try and increase the calories, going against my natural instincts. Whereas somebody who maybe has a tendency to overeat, it's like you're going to have to finish early. I'll be honest with you, I would take my problem 9 times out of 10.
Yeah.
Until it comes time to build some muscle. And I'm like, oh, fuck's sake. I wish I had a bigger stomach. But as I said, yeah, it's like something I've trained. Like I was literally doing the OMAD for a long time. I could really force feed myself. And again, you practice. Like first couple of times, just like anything else, you're not any good at it. Close to failure, didn't hit the target. Slowly but surely, you kind of get better and better and better. What were you
But
talking
also
about?
with there, also you don't have to force feed yourself as well. If you're bulking, like you actually don't have to force feed yourself. Eat until you're full, and like swap out foods for high calorie dense foods. That's really it. And
Yeah.
then also like enjoy snacking on more like highly dense.
Easy to say when you have a big appetite, Christy.
It is. It is.
You
Yeah,
know,
but
it's like me saying, just leave the packet of biscuits. It's easy. You're like,
yeah, but
you don't
with
understand,
there
man.
there is easier like and harder ways to do it. Like this is one of the things. Like my housemate who was trying to bulk, he's put on like 10 kilos by the way. He has a and 10 kilos of muscle as well. He has basically like when he first started, I seen him like eat like he'd make a whole thing of vegetables, and that would be like half of his plate. It'd be half of his plate.
Bro, stop eating
And
vegetables.
well, like not stop eating it, but like replace that with some more protein, some more rice, or some more like easy digestible carbohydrates. Like you could definitely
Put some dressing on that.
You could definitely add 500 calories to your breakfast very, very easily by making a bowl of cocoa puffs.
But my
That would
point
go
is
down
this.
so
My
handy.
point is this. My point is the same point that I made to you with the cutting calories is that at a certain point, it's not about meals. It's not about the meal. It's about how you feel. As I said, like I talked about this last week about the pizza. Like the pizza was the same. Nothing else changed, but I changed. So I was deeper into a deficit. So my appetite grew, the speed in which I ate grew, like my ability to eat grew. And so as you go deeper into a surplus, your appetite lessens in general. The same breakfast is more of a pain in the arse to eat. The same size, the same portions. You know, food that when you're very, very hungry and deep in a deficit, rich food like a chocolate cake, it's just too rich to eat, even if you haven't eaten in a couple hours, because your body, although today hasn't had any calories, is still in a surplus and is saying, I've had enough. Can you stop feeding me? An experience I'm sure is foreign to you.
Yeah, it's pretty
Is
fun.
it like there's
But I have been stuffed before. Like I have been
But I'm
really full
saying,
before,
but
and
to
wanted
the
to stop
point where
eating
that's
chicken.
but that's lasted for like a couple of weeks at a time.
No, so usually what happens, usually the times that I eat would usually be like post workout if I'm looking for a big meal. So like workouts usually tend to give me a really big appetite.
And this is another thing. Like this is another thing for honoring your hunger. It's like or maybe it's the exact opposite. If you're trying to bulk, one of the best bits of advice is say mindlessly eating. It's
Yeah.
like watch a TV show. Stop thinking about what you're doing, just so you can just get it into. You're not focused on your hunger cues. You can just kind of force feed. Like I literally, when at peak bulk, I'm watching motivational videos while I'm eating food. You can do this, man. Get that chicken in. Yeah, like it's like it's two ends of the spectrum,
Yeah, no,
and
100%.
problems exist at both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah. But the funniest thing about it though is that they're just the problems that you have to solve on one side are the solutions on the other side,
Yeah.
and vice versa. And it's just for me, it was so alien seeing someone struggle to get calories in. That's the experience I had anyway.
I know,
But,
and I'll never forget you telling me it's like all the stuff, like because I was somebody who was, I wouldn't even say skinny fat, just skinny. Like I was just skinny. Like I was pretty lean, small bit of muscle. I was just pretty lean. I had been skinny fat over the years, but the reason I was skinny fat is I was just eating, calorie dense food. But the big thing,
yeah, and you weren't training super hard as well at some points.
yeah. But the biggest thing for you was, or for me, was like when you were like, listen, bro, however many calories like you think you're eating, it's like it's not enough. It's like, oh
Yeah.
crap, I'm eating loads, man. I'm eating loads. It's like, are you gaining weight? No, it's not enough.
Yeah, it's not enough. It's not enough.
Please.
Sorry, bro.
Please. And same thing with the deficit. It's like, are you losing weight? No, it's not enough.
Yeah.
And again, I always feel very, very important to kind of just to mention this point every time we talk about that. Are you not losing weight? No. It's like, okay, are you a lady? Yes. All right. Are you losing weight over a 4-week period? No. All right. It's not enough. It's like you have to take your cycle into consideration, ladies. You really, really do. It's not fair. Life's not fair. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? You want me to give you an extra? You want to take your wee leg off your chromosomes? It's like you're a lady. That's what it is. You have a cycle. You need to learn to manage it and to understand it, so that way you can again, not fall into the same trap that everybody else falls into, which is like the same thing, a broader scale of that. Oh, I'm 1,200 calories and 1,200 calories and 1,200 calories. Now I'm 2,600 calories because you're over restricted. It's like if you restrict for a week, and then another week, and then the scales doesn't change. Fuck it, I'm just going to eat 3,000 calories. Well, now when the 4 weeks does show up, you're not going to be done anyway, and it's not because of the first 2 weeks didn't work. You just didn't see it, and so again, I find that always very, very important to remind the ladies of, and to the lads. You know, if you're losing weight with the lady in your house, oh, I'm doing it right. Oh, I lost weight every week. It's like, listen, more complicated for them. All right, give them a break.
A little bit of compassion.
Bit of compassion there. Come on. When was the last time you had a cycle?
Hey, I think I heard something that like women
I
have
knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say menstruation.
Huh?
Are you going to talk about menstruation or menstruation?
No.
All right.
I was just gonna say that. I was just gonna say that women are, I think, on a 28-day cycle, something like that, and guys are on a 24-hour cycle. So like our mood and our cycle actually changes like as the day goes on. So like if you ask,
Gotcha.
if I was to ask you your opinion of something, you know, first thing in the morning versus, you know, 4 o'clock in the day, it'll be very, very different. And your mood will be different, your energy will be different, all that sort of stuff. But it's like reliably similar as well, and you can bust that out of whack by not getting to sleep on time.
That's interesting.
So the last one was let me see, develop strategies for nourishing yourself when you're hungry. So what are the strategies to nourish yourself when you're hungry? Okay, so what is a nourishing meal or a nutritious meal? You need a portion of protein, at least one portion of protein. Okay, you need some hopefully leafy green vegetables or colors in that meal, and then you need some carbohydrates to either fuel your workouts or to basically or swap them out for more protein if you're in a deficit and you're trying to lose weight. So nourishing foods, basically foods that help you hit your goals and help you look and feel your best. A nutritious meal has roughly between 20 and 35 grams of protein, depending on your size. If you're a bigger person, well, then it will be closer to your 35 grams. If you're a smaller person, closer to your 20 grams. It should probably have at least one portion of carbohydrates in it, and it should have lots of different colored vegetables. And if there's lots of vegetables in it, you get a little bit of volume in there, so you'll feel a little bit more hunger or a little bit more satisfied from it and less hunger. The protein in there will also make you feel less hungry, and then the carbohydrates will help satisfy that little glycemic craving you have. Boom, that's the answer.
Love it.
And you know, we can move on to the next one if you want, or we can cut it there. There's also the next section that we're going to go on to is making peace with food, challenging food rules and restrictions, embrace all foods without guilt or judgment, experiment with permission-based eating, and then after that we've got challenging the food police. I think that'll be an interesting episode.
Well, one thing we were kind of talking about, because we were kind of talking about toxic things in dieting culture, weren't we? We were kind of talking about that last week. It's kind of, you know, in the mix of all this kind of stuff. And there's one here I would love to hear your opinion on, if you don't mind.
Go for it.
It perpetuates fat phobia.
Diet culture perpetuates fat phobia. All right, well, I hate that word. Define it. Yeah, okay, right. First we have to define what fat phobia is. So generally phobias, generally this is why I'm frustrated with it. So generally phobias is like let's say what's the word? Like a fear that's unfounded.
Irrational.
A fear, yeah, irrational. An irrational fear. That's basically what it's for. And fat phobia basically doesn't mean that at all. It doesn't mean that people are afraid of fat people or anything like that, or afraid of fat in general. What it is like some sort of like discriminatory behavior or some way of like actually judging people or treating people badly based on their weight or making all these assumptions about them. I don't know. While I don't like the term fat phobia, I don't think anyone who is overweight should be treated badly or anything like that, or bullied or made feel shame or guilt around it, because again, the shame or guilt cycle will only make it worse. To a point, everyone is different. There's also an idea that I was subscribed to that I think you subscribe to as well, which is that like, you know, a little bit of light tease and a little bit of light bullying wet on something that someone is not handling, that they have come to you and talked to you about, knowing that they should handle it. John being like, hey, do you remember that thing you said you were doing and you're not doing it, and we both know you really want to do it and you're not living up to it. I
Yeah,
think that is like,
it comes from love. It's like only
yeah,
only when you know that you're actually not being judged. It comes from pure love and wanting the best for you. And yeah, it's like yeah, especially like slagging can be very very powerful and very very useful. But as I said, if you're going around and you're what did it say? Is it what is it? Is it what's that fucking term that they say? It's like negative reinforcement. But I feel like there's a more popular phrase where it's like essentially you're bullying someone in a positive direction. It's like I feel like if you're going around to people who don't know, like, and trust you, and that's your approach, it's like that's fucking terrible. But it's like yeah, it's like for some people that works, and for other people it's like they literally need their hand held and fucking walk through the process again and again and again, and understand that they're allowed to fail, and that that the reason that they're overweight is because again what we talked about, that they're dealing with this and they're dealing with that, and realistically that's probably what they should be focused on, not necessarily any of this other stuff. Also while simultaneously trying to have better eating habits, to not fall into a shame cycle that you're the only one, you're a fucking disgusting person, like the way that you're acting is absolutely shame. It's like it's like this is a very common thing nowadays, and it's hijacked and perpetuated by the fact that companies are literally designing food to get you to that bliss point, which if you've got a really fucking bad problem or just a really strong tendency to use food as your stress, it's like that's going to be hyper reinforced. And so it's like it's this very multi-layered problem. But yeah, it's like
with it,
also sorry, just on that, and like the gym culture and diet culture does also not promote, but kind of generally causes like people to have some kind of unrealistic body standard. Like it's like you're like, I know people who are really fit, they've got great muscle tone. Me, for example, you for another one. And lots of clients I know, it's like who are relatively lean. It's like no, they're not show ready. No, they might not be quote unquote ready for the beach, absolutely shredded. Like they imagine in their head, and still think that they're fat. It's like you're perfectly healthy. And so it's like in that sense, people are afraid to gain any kind of fat because they don't have a realistic standard of what a healthy amount of body fat is. And also then on the opposite side of things, it's like I've heard so many times people say it's like, oh, so and so died, just for toxic, not to say that if you're overweight you're gonna die, but so and so died. And it's like, oh, no way, what age were they, what was this? People generally just ask out of curiosity. It's like, oh, they're perfectly healthy, normal guy. And it's like, and then you see a picture of them, it's like, and they were 2, 3, 4 stone overweight. It's like, and so that's normalized too. And so it's like, it's like we need to understand, it's like, having a belly that you can see through your t-shirt is not healthy, and that is, quote unquote fat or overweight, or you kind of get into that bracket. But also it's like, beach ready, absolutely shredded. It's like that's not normal either. It's like it's somewhere in the middle, and there is body fat percentages and weight, BMIs, all this kind of stuff. Obviously, you've got excess muscle mass, it's going to be a little bit more inaccurate, but there is actual standards for health. And sometimes you might look at yourself in the mirror and see, oh, I'm not absolutely shredded, I'm not this, and feel a certain way about that. But you have to have the realistic standard and the objective thing to say, okay, yes, I am healthy, or okay, no, I'm not healthy. Either way, either you're too lean because you're bulimic, or you're anorexic and your standard is way off, or you're just obsessed with getting shredded. And for ladies, your cycle stops. For lads, your energy levels, your sex drive is completely tanked. Or the opposite, you're overweight, you're unhealthy, you're at risk of X, Y, or Z. But it's like I look the same as all my friends.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure where I want to jump in on that, but one of the things as well that I wanted to say was about how you look at and how people perceive you is strongly linked. And I think people feel a lot of pressure to be leaner, and a lot of pressure to be skinny, and or girls be skinny and look a certain way, because the pressure is there, whether you like it or not. There is a societal pressure to try and look and feel your best, and then some people play that game and some people don't. But if fat phobia for gym culture, I don't think is the side of the gym culture I see is like, don't be fat phobic. If someone's new to the gym, welcome them in, give them a bit of encouragement, give them a wee pat in the back and say, well done, you're making the change. That's the side I see. And anyone who doesn't take that sort of perspective is a bit of a dickhead. And I think people who don't take that perspective kind of should be called out and they're called dickheads for.
But I feel
dickheads.
like an awful lot of people, like we talked about the spectrum of people, some people generally got up one day, decided to be fit and flipped the switch, and that was it. And so if that's your experience, like anybody who doesn't do that, it's like you used to be lazy, you used to see yourself as lazy. So anybody who's not doing that is lazy. It's like, whereas like, listen, you've absolutely no idea how many hurdles someone has to jump through just to get to where you started. You know, like to get to the point where they can make the decision. Because I know it took me like 3, 4, 5 years of like on, off, you know, sieving through my bullshit, growing as a person, you know, growing as, you know, chronologically to the point where I could get to the point where I could support myself and feed myself in a way that I deemed appropriate, to learn the information, to get the skills, to, you know, to give a shit, to get the why, to develop, you know, yourself as a person, to read the books. It's like, it's not the same for everybody. And anybody who is generally, honestly, like trying their best, even if that looks like head in the sand, but when, you know, you can tell when somebody's trying their best, and even if, you know, they just have good intentions, you know, it's like you should have patience with them and, you know, understand that it's not an easy fix and it's not a quick fix. And like for talk's sake, you know, I had terrible nutrition habits for years and was not shamed because I was skinny. But if I had terrible nutrition habits and it manifested to where I was overweight, it's like I probably would be, you know, shamed or judged or whatever.
That this is another thing I wanted to bring up as well. Like people are different, and the same thing that you give to two different people will work completely differently. Like for someone who is trying to get in real good shape, whatever it is, and let's say they're a really determined young lady, and they go they have like a crush or something like that there, and they get the courage to go ask them out and they get rejected because they're overweight. It's like, oh, sorry, I don't date fat girls or something like that there. And that's something that's said to them. That could be the point where she goes, fuck this, and turns everything around and starts losing weight and starts, getting real healthy, getting real strong, all that sort of stuff. Whereas that same experience for some guy or whatever, he goes up, finally gets courage to ask a girl out, whatever, and she says, oh, no, sorry. She plays it off whatever way she wants to play it off, but he knows that it's because he's really overweight, like he could go home, cry himself to sleep and be real sad about it and get even more fat. And I think everyone's different. Everyone uses different things for different motivation, or different things motivate people differently. And I think expecting everyone to be motivated the same way you are, or expecting everyone to just get up and do it is not really going to work, and it's not helpful. And I think shame and guilt around all that sort of stuff is more damaging than it is helpful.
Yeah, and this is it. I mean, like, regardless of the end of the day, guys, the goal should be for yourself on your own journey to get healthy. You know what healthy is. There is metrics out there, and yeah, your journey is going to look different to everybody else. So you can't expect to ride the same road as everybody else, and you also can't expect everybody to just hop to the way that you did. It's like it could take some people 5-10 times as long. But again, like, I feel like if you're on the journey and you're really doing your best, like, that should inspire people enough just by you doing your best. People see you change and no change is possible. That's a good model for somebody to follow. It's like, that's kind of the way to go. It's kind of what we try and do. And yeah, just kind of based on what you said there, that thing, what is it? The hot water that softens the potato hardens the egg.
Yeah, exactly. So everyone's different, and don't judge people for being fat. You get one life, everyone's figuring it out. No one knows what they're doing. And yeah, peace out, guys. All right, we gotta go.
Peace.